I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the prayers for my travel, and I'm glad that I got back safely. You never know when you go to a different country and you have to go through the country of Belgium because they have that place locked down really good. So I went through security a lot. I lost a jar of peanut butter in Belgium. They took it, but Nairobi liked it. So first and foremost, in Galatians, it tells us, Paul writes that we're called to be free, but not to use our freedom to indulge in the flesh, but to serve one another in love. And I bring that up because I want to commend some of the young people. Yesterday we went to Fish and Loaves, and we fed over 800 families, 25,000 pounds of food. I got an email, and they thanked the Lincoln Park Church of Christ young people for being there. So if you were involved in that yesterday, I'd like you to stand. You see Keeson and Lucas, they're a little tired this morning because if you 850 families, that's 800 gallons of milk that they put in a shopping cart. So they are super sore. Tyler and Preston helped out yesterday too, so that was really good. Before I get started, I wanted to bring up a story because I think going on a trip and seeing the work that's being done by God, seeing the work that the young people are doing. Why do we do missions? Why do we go and serve other people? Why do we go to Fish and Loaves? Why do we go to Kenya? Why do we do Walk for Water? Why do we raise funds for all this stuff? And I think the story of David and Goliath gives us a great idea on why we do it. If you want, turn your Bibles to 1 Samuel. Most of us know the story of David and Goliath. You have a wee little man. Sometimes I compare him to Zacchaeus in this situation because Goliath was 9 feet 9 inches tall, huge man. You can't even compare him to anybody nowadays because I think the tallest basketball player is 7'4", 7'7" maybe, if I'm that guy from the Spurs. But 9'9", and Goliath gets in front of Israel. And he says some stuff in verse 8, a little bit in verse 8. He stands in front of Israel, and he says, "Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine? And are you not servants of Saul? Choose a man and have him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will become your subjects. But if I overcome him and kill him, you will become our subjects and serve us." Then the Philistine said, "This day I defy the armies of Israel. Give me a man and let us fight each other." And then it says, upon hearing this, Saul and all the Israelites were dismayed and terrified. I think if a 9'9" man stood in front of us today and said, "Fight me," we would all be terrified as well. But David had a little bit of courage. He was a shepherd boy, and he had a sling. And we know the story. He had a sling. And a lot of shepherds, they practiced their sling. They had some downtime when the sheep were going around, but they used the sling to protect the sheep. So they were pretty good at their skill. David gets up in front of Goliath, and when Goliath sees David, in verse 41 of 1 Samuel 17, it says, "Meanwhile, the Philistine with his shield bearer in front of him kept coming closer to David. He looked David over and saw that he was little more than a boy, glowing with health and handsome, and he despised him." He was healthy, but he was small, and he was handsome. Doesn't seem like a fighter to Goliath. He said to David, "Am I a dog?" I just expect Goliath to talk like that. "Am I a dog? Then you come with me with sticks." And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. "Come here," he said, "and I will give you flesh to the birds and the wild animals." And what I think is interesting about why we do missions and why we do the things that we do is David's response here in 45. David said to the Philistine, "You come against me with sword and a spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defiled. This day the Lord will deliver you into the hands, and I'll strike you down and cut off your head. This very day I will give the carcasses of the Philistine army to the birds and the wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel. All those gathered here will know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give all of you into your hands." So why do we do what we do? We do what we do so that they may know. We do what we do. We serve. We do missions. We donate. We help other people. We show God's love so that other people can know who God is. And I'm a firm believer, without any of that, none of this would be possible. So I'm going to tell you some stories of my trip. It was a great trip. But as I tell you stories, I want you to think about the "so they may know." Because that was kind of the theme that I got throughout the whole trip, as I just saw the power of God and how one small thing really changed a community. This is the team that we went with. It looks pretty good up there. I was worried that you weren't going to be able to see some of this stuff, but it looks good up there. This was the team that went. Some of them were donors, some of them were Healing Hands employees. And then the guy in the orange is Art Wood. He is the president of Healing Hands International. The guy next to him does a role that I do with the Walk for Water. In the middle is Ebenezer, and I'll talk about him in the next slide. But that was our team. We got to the airport we got to the Nairobi airport very late at night. So it was like 11 o'clock. Got checked into the hotel, and the next day we were on the road by 6 o'clock. I had to put the white van in there because we were in that white van probably 8 hours a day. There was 10 of us in that white van the whole time. It doesn't look super big because it wasn't super big, but we got close to Jesus in that van. I'm pretty confident we did. And that's the good news. And it got us from point A to point B. And Kenya is one of those countries where you're not sure if you're going to make it from destination to destination without having a repair or a flat tire. Every gas station there is like a Daytona 500. You can pull right in there. They'll fix the tire right away, and you're back on the road in 15 minutes. It was nuts, because that happened twice. So. Right here, this is Ebenezer. He is a Healing Hands employee. He is the Director of Agriculture and African Relations. So he's a graduate of the Nairobi Great Commission School, which is the preaching school in Nairobi. It's a Church of Christ preaching school. So he is the one that kind of determines where some of the work does, where some of the funds go. Hey, this church needs this. This church needs this. This church needs water. They're begging for water. They need it. And he usually goes out, kind of vets the people. A lot of times he knows the person already because they graduated from the Nairobi Great Commission School. So a lot of the work is being done through that Great Commission School. So think Sunset School of Preaching, same concept here. So that's him and his family, his daughter and his son. So the first stop we did, 6 o'clock in the morning, we left and went to the Kasiki Church of Christ. The Kasiki Church of Christ has a great story. About 10 years ago at this church, they did an agriculture program for Healing Hands. So Ebenezer, he's got a PhD in agriculture, and he went to the Kasiki Church of Christ to teach them how to grow vegetables in such an area where there's not a lot of water. The closest body of water, and I'll show that to you in just a second, the closest body of water was 2 miles away, and it was just a small river. So he went in there to teach them how to grow agriculture. They had a small well that was there at the church, but when Healing Hands went back, that well had dried up. And when Healing Hands went back, they saw people digging by hand with a shovel 30 feet deep to try to get water so that they could survive. And so Healing Hands was like, we need a well here. And so that's exactly what happened. And it changed everything. So Alphonse and Jonas, they're the leaders of the church. Alphonse actually started the Kasiki Church of Christ. He actually used to be an alcohol bootlegger, and he took a machete to the face. He's got a big scar on his face. And then at that point, he was taught the gospel and started the Kasiki Church of Christ. And his son Jonas is the minister there. What I thought was interesting with Africa is everybody kind of had an American name. I was expecting different names, but I met a Frederick, I met a Patrick, I met a Philip, I met a Jonas, I met an Al, and I was like, okay, I didn't expect that, but so it was easy to remember some of their names. So this was the only source of water in that area prior to them digging the well at the Kasiki Church of Christ. So, and you can see there was a lady there when we stopped there. She's washing her clothes in that body of water. The well, come to find out that Jonas actually plumbed the well he piped the well to 20 residences in that area so that they could get water. And it was really interesting there. This is the old shallow dried up well prior to Healing Hands digging their well. And you can see it wasn't very big and it dried up. And all their vegetables ended up going away. What was interesting with Jonas is he was telling a story, showing us around his garden, and he was saying these were the hope seeds that Clint brought, and Clint's a Healing Hands employees with their agriculture program. These were the hope seeds that Clint brought to us, and you see how they're growing. Little did I know, about a year ago, I called Healing Hands International to get some hope seeds for us to pack. We went over to Barb's house for a barbecue, and Carmela and Layla packed a bunch of hope seeds. And what was really cool, and I might cry here, what was really cool is these were the seeds that Carmela and Layla had packed. And Jonas was like, I got to get your picture. And so it was really interesting that we don't know the impact that God's going to have on just a small thing. Because I was like, oh, these hope seeds will just be something fun for the kids to do to kind of get them out of their element. I didn't think that I was going to show up in Kenya and see that. You know, and we're pretty confident those were the seeds that they packed. And I mean, they packed hundreds of seeds that day. You know, a simple task, but it's being used to grow food and feeding a community. And here's where God can be made known through the whole community. The community didn't have water. They're seeing that the Church of Christ in Kasiki has water, has vegetables, and everybody's looking around like, I want that. And so they show up at the church. And it's interesting. This is the well that was dug. It looks a little bit different than some of the hand crank wells. You see that right there is a solar panel, and that's what pumps the well. So most of the wells in Africa have to have a solar panel on it, and then the big tank on the top is a storage tank for excess water, but that helps it to be plumbed into the community in the garden. Rabbit urine collection. This is really interesting, but one thing that I know it's interesting. One thing that Ebenezer taught and learned is that rabbit urine is a natural pesticide. So he's been teaching in Africa how to collect rabbit urine. They dilute it in water, and then they spray their vegetables so that it can continue to grow. And you can see from right here, that garden's thriving. That garden's doing good, and that wouldn't be possible without a well. It wouldn't be possible without this rabbit urine. And you can see how the rabbits are in the cage, and then there's a gutter that kind of goes down, and then it funnels into the bucket. It didn't smell very great, but it was good. And it was interesting to see, because this is something that Healing Hands teaches them in order for their gardens. And it was obvious that Healing Hands' gardens were a lot different than some of the other people's gardens. So the church growth there, they started with about 30 members. It just started with one family, had 30 members. And when the well got in and they saw the agriculture, they're over 100 members now. That Kasiki Church of Christ is now trying to fund and build a bigger building because the building was pretty tiny. And so that was the first day we went there. The second day we went to the Rangu Church of Christ, or the Rangu Church of Christ, and we worshiped with them. We had the Lord's Supper with them. The minister there, his name is Timothy. He's a graduate of the Nairobi Great Commission School. And this is a newer church, 100 members plus. And we got there. They were happy that we were there. They sang to us. We had Sunday school there. The kids got up and sang songs for us. I wanted to play videos for you guys, but I know sometimes with technology, the video might not have worked, so I didn't do it. But if you guys want to see the video, I'd be happy to send some of the videos of them singing to us came there. So we had church there with them. But this community, when COVID happened, they lost a lot of, COVID and drought, they lost a lot of food. They did an agriculture program, but one of the things that was needed was a well. So last year a well was dug there, and this is the well, and that's Ebenezer and Timothy at the well getting water. You see the picture of me with the bucket of water and that robe on. There's African tribes wear these robes, and it's an honor. So after church, they called us all up and put these robes on us, and we had to walk around in 80-degree weather with extra clothing on. So it was a little hot, but it was fine. So I was going to wear the robe today, but I just figured maybe I shouldn't, But I want to show you a picture of their garden. They do rabbit collection there, but here's outside the church building. The church building is that the gray tin can stuff. That's the church building. It's not much, but this garden was grown on the side of a hill. It's a big hill. It's a rocky hill. The soil didn't look great, but through the agriculture that Ebenezer's been teaching them, you can see that their garden's thriving. And so Healing Hands, one of the things that they try to do is, hey, we want to help you, but we want to be able to help you help yourself. We don't want to just give it to you and then walk away, and then you guys need more help and more help. So by doing agriculture, by doing the rabbits, they're creating jobs and businesses for the people in the community, for the minister to be able to support himself. And that's one of the things that water is providing for Kenya. Last year there was a big flood. It rained, but it doesn't rain often because there was a drought prior to that for 10 years. So a lot of the stuff dried up. Last year there was a lot of rain, big flooding, and over 600 people died. So there was a lot of issues in Kenya, and Healing Hands was able to go in and help, send flour and corn to a lot of these communities that needed it. And it was interesting to hear because Ebenezer's the one that's, people are calling Ebenezer, and then Ebenezer's like, we need help here, and we need help here, and we need help here, and then Healing Hands will pray about it and say, hey, look, if God tells us yes, we can't say no. And I love that's response. I heard them say that numerous times because we're sitting there listening to the request of some of the church members that we need this, and you can't help everybody, but their response is, we hear your request, we're going to pray about it, and if God tells us yes, then we can't say no. And I love that response. We're leaving it up to God. The road to Kavango from the hotel, Kavango was a community obviously in Kenya. It was about 2-3 hours away. In the white van, we had to drive far. And the roads in Kenya aren't very great. So I was sitting in the back of the van, and all of a sudden, it was like, you started a walk on my Fitbit. And I was like, how did I start a walk? I'm sitting down. And so you're at 10,000 steps. I'm just bumping on the road. And I'm like, oh, great, I'm going to get my walking goal, And it's like, this is going to make me look good, So if I gain a lot of weight and I get a lot of steps, it's because of Africa. But the road to Kavango, the reason why I bring that up is as we're driving around, we saw a lot of children, we saw a lot of women, we saw children at the water trying to fill up their buckets. This was a real picture that I took not too far from Kavango, but not too far from the water. I mean, you see children here filling up their buckets. You see a lady washing her clothes, and that's actually Lake Victoria. That's a big lake that connects a lot of countries. That's their big body of water in Africa. She's washing her clothes there. You see children on the side of the road walking to get water. And that's really what we've been doing with our Walk for Water here, is we're trying to help that. We're trying to make it easier for them to get clean water, for them to get water in general. You think if you have to walk 2 miles to get water, you can't go to school. You can't go to work because you need that water to take care of your family. And that's what I saw. What was also interesting with Africa is they're just like America. Cell phones are taking over there. So it was really weird to see some of these kids walking with a bucket of water, texting or talking to someone on the phone. I'm like, I don't understand that. But the infrastructure is not there. They don't have plumbing like we have in many of the areas in Africa. Nairobi was very well developed, but at the same time, I mean, huge, nice buildings. It looks richy in some areas, but the largest slum in Africa is in Nairobi. Over 1 million people live in those slums, and I thought it was interesting. And as I'm talking about this, I wanted to bring up the idea. It's hard to see some of these things. It's hard to see somebody getting water from a river, washing their clothes from a lake. I saw children that looked like they had the same clothes on for weeks, dirty clothes. It's hard to see that, and you ask yourself, God, how is this your plan? How is this good? And it takes me to John 9. You know, in my life, most of you guys know, like I've struggled with a lot of death. So John 9 is something that's always speaks to me big. But as I'm driving through Africa, I'm like, man, this is hard to see some of this stuff. But John 9, if you read the story, Jesus and his disciples, they're walking down the road. And they see a man who's been blind from birth. And they look at Jesus and they say, hey, Jesus, who sinned, this man or his parents? Because that was the idea back then, that, hey, people sinned and this is why your life is the way it is. Who sinned that this man was born blind? And Jesus looked at him and said, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this was done so that the works of God may be displayed in his life. Right? This was done so that the works of God may be known. Right? Just like the story of David. Just like a well being put in a community. You put a well at a church building. This was done so that God may be known. And I thought it was interesting. And then in that story, Jesus, spits on the mud, and the guy washes his eyes after the mud was being put on his eyes. And now people are asking questions. Who is this God? We want this God. And I saw that in Africa. I saw that because of the water. If you think about it, without water, we can't do most of the stuff that we do. An average American uses 55 gallons of water a day. A jerry can or a bucket here is only 5 gallons of water. They got to go back and forth to get a lot of the stuff done, or they use less water. We use a lot of water. So I wanted to bring that point up, to be made known. That the works of God can be displayed in their lives. Without some of this stuff, the works of God may not be known. We don't know. Many of you guys are familiar with the Magi boxes. Here's the Magi project that we were able in Kavango to stop at a school. And with donor money, Healing Hands bought, in the country, they bought shoes. They bought book bags. They bought books. And we had probably over 200 children standing in line waiting to receive shoes, waiting to receive books, waiting to receive backpacks. This is what one of the classrooms looked like at the school. It wasn't much. And most of the kids in Kenya, you have to pay to go to school in Kenya. If you don't pay to go, then you don't go to school. There's a fee to go to school in the public school system, so some of the kids don't go. But you can see that it's not much. You pay. I would have a hard time paying money for my kid to go to school and the classroom looks like that. I'm like, what does my money go to? But that's what a typical classroom looks like. Here's us passing out some of the books that the younger kids got 4 books, crayons, and until we ran out, and then the older kids got book bags and shoes. And so it was really cool to just bless them and show them God's love. And that's through the Magi boxes. We've done Magi boxes here, but instead of sending the boxes, we bought the stuff in the country and then distributed it. And it was really cool to see the smiles on their faces. If you look here, you've got one of the girls there, she's got shoes and a backpack, and then the little kid's got the books, and there's some of the kids waiting in line right there to get their stuff. And it was really interesting, and here's kind of the whole group of people. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'm going to bring it up because the guy that's sitting there with the backpack that's got the hat on in the ground, almost not in the middle, but the one next to it, that's the president of education in Kenya. so bigwig in Kenya, and he kind of shows up, and we're talking to him, and he's shaking hands and taking pictures. And I had this thought, like, we're here because you're not doing your job. That's what I was thinking. And I hate to be so kind of, but that's the president of education. And it made no sense to me. And I had to put that aside, you know what I mean? Because it was great that we were able to help the people in the country. But the education in that country, it's different. I mean, it's really different compared to here. Here's the Kavango Church of Christ. So we spent the day, Kavango Church of Christ, Douglas. This is Douglas. He started the church last year. He was a graduate in 2022 of the Nairobi Great Commission School. And he wanted to teach people about Christ, but there wasn't a Church of Christ in the area, so he started one. And in a year, this is what the church building looks like. It was one of the best buildings we saw, and that was through donors. You can see they got the agriculture program, so right on the side of the church, they're growing vegetables. Here's their well right there that they got last year there, and it's helping the community. Their garden's thriving. You can see all the tomatoes that were there that the ladies were picking up to take to the market to sell. And then there's some of the cute kids from the Sunday school that were there. And they kind of sang for us, kind of like VBS style, and it was really cute to kind of see that and welcome them and shake hands and give high fives and hugs. And they were just happy that we were there and that people were listening and they were a voice, that we could be a voice for them. The Ottawa Church of Christ was the next day. We drove all the way from Nairobi to the west side of Kenya. It was about a 4-hour drive on we actually were on a freeway, so it wasn't terrible there, but when we got there, we had to go on a side road across the molasses processing plant. It smelled really bad. We bottomed out one time because the road was really bad, and then we had to stop. And they're like, this is where we get out and walk. And I was like, are you kidding me? And we had to walk a mile to get to this church. You see us walking there. And then when we got to the church, there were 200 kids at a school, and I started looking around. I'm like, where are the houses here? Is this like Children of the Corn? They're just popping out of like the forest and going to the school. And they're like, no, they walk. They walk miles to go. And I was like, oh my goodness. Because we walked far, and a lot of the ladies were walking in heels and dresses because they were excited to meet us. And we get there, and we saw this beautiful compound with a well. That's Jeanette right there. She's the director in Africa of the Women for Hope program. So I know the ladies here have done a Women for Hope trunk show. But the Women for Hope program, it's fantastic. They teach the women their business skills, how to have a bank account, how to manage a bank account, how to start a business, because they don't get necessarily taught that in Kenya. It's the men that work. And then if the women can work, they got to take care of the family. They got to walk to get water. They've been doing that. So they're teaching them skills. And at this church, Jeanette taught a lady how to make soap, hand soap. And she went from not having an income to getting a cell phone, being able to put her kids in school just by making hand soap. And it was really cool to see some of the programs that Healing Hands is doing. So this is the Women of Hope group there. They built that building, and then we dedicated this corn mill. They're going to start processing corn. One of the popular foods there, I forget what it's called, but it's made out of corn. It's like cake, but it's not sweet at all. I didn't like it that much, but that's okay. That's okay. So we dedicated that. We prayed for it. They're going to install it, and so some of these women right here can work and make an income. Because looking around that area, there wasn't much for them to do to work, and even to get to work, you can't even get there from the road, so you got to walk. A lot of them have to send it to the markets. Most of the stuff goes to Nairobi, and it takes 4 hours to get to Nairobi. So I thought it was interesting. So that's Jeanette there, just taking a picture with it. The Oyaro Church of Christ, we went the next day, and this was an interesting church. It's an area where AIDS and HIV has ransacked a lot of the men in that population. So you got a lot of orphans, and then the women's got to take after the orphans. There wasn't water. There wasn't water there. So the women are walking, very poor area. Gardens aren't growing, and Frederick, the minister, at a church there. It wasn't a big church, but he was a graduate in a Nairobi Great Commission School. Begged Healing Hands, we need a well. These people we need water. So Healing Hands went out, they got a contractor to come out, surveyed the land, and the first time they dug a well, they hit rock. And some people in the neighborhood started mocking God. Your God's not going to do this for you because God's not going to do it for you. So they went out a second time, hit rock a second time. Community's kind of laughing at Frederick in the church. The third time they hit water. And they were able to install a well. And what was interesting was when I got there, the people that were mocking the Church of Christ were the Seventh-day Adventist church that was across the street. I just thought it was interesting. I was like, wow, okay, way to go. But I just want to let you know, this is the well. This is some children in the community from the church, or children in the community going to the church to get the water that people in the community didn't think were possible. So that church is thriving. That church is growing. They're building a new building. Frederick actually moved into a bigger house. And when I say bigger, it's not what we think bigger, but it's not a stick hut that he was living in. He's got 3 children. It's a 2-bedroom house, maybe 600 square feet. But we were able to eat in his house. I didn't put that picture up, but you see how now all of a sudden things are starting to happen in Africa because of water. I wanted to bring this up. They got a Woman of Hope program that they're starting. These women, like I said, they didn't have an income. They were poor. Water provided them with a lot of resources to start a business. And what they do at the Ayaro Church of Christ is they make these handbags, all from scratch. They actually grow, I forget what the plant's called, they grow the leaves and the twine, and they pull it off, twist it together, and make these handbags. Each handbag take 2 days to make. I brought a handbag because I had to buy Stacy one but I just wanted to show you. I mean, these are great handbags, and you guys are more than welcome to look at it. But they use bark from the tree. They boil the bark, and that's how they make these different colors. And then you see that bowl right there. That's charcoal. They boil the charcoal, and some of the purses that have the black on it, that's dye. But all these are made because of the water that it was put in the community. Without that well, none of this would happen. And I just look, and I'm like, man, you just don't think of those things. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful purse. So we brought, they had 40 of them for us, so we smuggled them back into we didn't smuggle them back in the country, but that's what I felt like we were doing. But we brought some of them back so that Healing Hands can sell them at their Women for Hope weekend, which they do have one coming up, and I wanted to kind of bring that up. I know I'm running short on time real quick, but I wanted to bring that up. They have a Women for Hope weekend. It's in November. It's in Ohio. Normally they were in Nashville, but they have a Women for Hope weekend. It's going to have some speakers for women, different business things, different Christ-like things for the women. So I think that's something, if you're looking for a weekend, it's in November. I think some of the ladies should go to that. So that's the Ayaro Church of Christ, thriving church, all because of water. The Winyo Church of Christ, we stopped there one of the last days. They had a school there. You could see the well there and some of the children from the school at the well. You see me and Rob up there at the central point of the well, and then some of the children. Most of the children ate by hand, like you would at medieval times. They didn't eat with silverware. So that was just lunch period for some of the kids at the school. I was able to present a couple soccer balls to some of the kids there because their soccer balls were really old, which was really nice. And then the Winyo Church of Christ, their Women for Hope, started a peanut butter business. And I was super excited because I love peanut butter. Layla loves peanut butter. We eat it by the spoon. And I'm like, we're going to bring some of that back. So we ended up purchasing all that peanut butter. Healing Hands can't sell it in America due to regulations. But these women sold this peanut butter to make a living, and it was all taught through the Women of Hope program and Jeanette business. And so that's thriving. This is premium peanut butter. It's just peanut butter and salt. And I got to Belgium, and they stole it. So I'm trying to get my hands on more peanut butter. I got it on the airplane, but Belgium's locked down because Belgium, they had a terrorist attack 8 years ago. So we had to go through security quite a bit in Belgium, and the guy looked at me and I thought I was getting arrested for having peanut butter in my bag. But I was like, it's not a liquid. And he's like, yeah, I know. So he took it. But anyways, I say all this stuff We have our Walk for Water next week. This is our 16th Walk for Water. So we are doing stuff, and you see that Walk for Water and the donations that we're doing are making an impact on communities. Our Walk for Water, it's going to be at Heritage Park next week after church. It starts at 2 o'clock. 1 o'clock, we're going to have lunch. So that's why, if you want to do Walk for Water, sign up ahead of time. You get a free T-shirt, which I have in here. These are what the T-shirts look like this year, so you get a free T-shirt by signing up, and you can ask your friends and family for donations. And like I say, sometimes it's hard to ask for donations, especially for your friends and family, but keep in mind, all this is so that God's name may be known, so that God's goodness may be known. So I'd love for you guys to sign up for Walk for Water. I've got kind of a setup in the lobby. You can put your name on the sheet there. There's this QR code where you can scan. You can sign up online when you get home. But I hope to see you guys all next week there. That was my trip to Africa in a nutshell. Obviously, there's a lot more stories, but there was a lot of information in one day. There's some churches that I wasn't even able to present because I thought it was like a rock band tour. We kind of like showed up, shake hands, sat down, everybody sang to us, they fed us. All right, we got to go to the next place. We just didn't have enough time to check on everything, but it was really great to see the work that was being done. Water, Charlie wore the shirt today where it says clean water changes everything. There's been different Walk for Water themes. This year's theme for Walk for Water is a new beginning. But they all go hand in hand. Change the cycle. And you think clean water changes everything. Water changes everything. And I saw that in Africa. You put a well there, it changed and transformed a community. All by water. And just like our walk with Jesus, right, water changes everything. Like Jesus died on the cross for us, and when we're baptized, we are born again. It's a new beginning. And so there was a great parallel. I was going to read 1 Peter 3. I think is great because that's when Peter talks about Noah's Ark and salvation. Real quick, 1 Peter 3. This is what it says, 1 Peter 3 in 19, half of 19. It says, to those who were disobedient long ago when God waited patiently in the days of Noah while the ark was being built. In it, only a few people, 8 in all, were saved through water. And this water symbolizes baptism that now saves you also. But not the removal of dirt from the body, but the pledge of a clear conscience toward God. It saves you by the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Right? And I saw, like, when I was in, this scripture kind of came up as we're driving around in the van for 8 hours. That, hey, this water saved 8 people in the ark. This water is saving thousands of people in Africa. And it's an interesting correlation that water saves us today here in America. We can't survive as Christians without the water back here. And that's kind of our invitation. If you're struggling today and you need us to pray for you, we'd be happy to pray for you. An elder can pray for you. Russ is a really good prayer. I don't know if you know that, but he's a good prayer. But Dave's a good prayer too. We can pray for you. We can help you out. You can come forward and do that. If you want to be baptized and change and be made new and have a new beginning, because we know that water changes everything, you can do that too while we stand and sing.